Our first lesson today comes from the beginning of the book of Exodus. At the end of the Genesis narrative, the Israelite people have achieved a most favorable immigrant status in Egypt because they were of the family of Joseph. But now a new king has arisen over Egypt who does not know Joseph. And Israel's status has deteriorated from being welcome guests to being feared aliens and oppressed slaves. Beginning in verse 12. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians became ruthless in imposing tasks on the Israelites and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and in brick and in every kind of field labor. They were ruthless in all the tasks that they imposed on them. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, "When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, she shall live." But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. May God add God's blessing to the hearing and the reading of these words. If you would please stand if you are able for the reading of the gospel. Our gospel lesson today comes at the midpoint and the turning point of the Gospel of Mark. In the previous scene, Peter confessed that Jesus is the Messiah, and Jesus, much to Peter's consternation, spoke of his suffering, death, and resurrection, and the sacrificial nature of discipleship. Now, 6 days later, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up on a high mountain, beginning in verse 2. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. These are the words of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Have you set your priorities yet for the year? I'm just doing everything out of order this Sunday, aren't I? I used a scripture that's normally used. It's called the Mount of Transfiguration. It always happens the Sunday before Lent. And I'll use it then too, but now I've pulled it out in September, and now I'm asking you, have you set your priorities for the year yet? And that's a New Year's Eve thing to do, right? I'm not supposed to ask you to reflect on what's truly important in your life and to set the order of things until we get to the end of December. But you know, Labor Day really marks the sort of informal, formal end of the summer. And we talk about gearing back up, and this Sunday we're celebrating what we call Kickoff Sunday, where we're rolling out our new schedule, and we've put a later traditional service back into our worship Sunday morning in person. And so it feels like we're kicking off something new, and what I know that you know is that if we aren't careful as we move into this sort of season of the year, our schedules will dictate to us our priorities rather than us deciding our priorities and dictating our schedule. Sometimes I think we don't want to make a decision about what's truly important to us. We don't want to make that decision because we're not sure maybe if it will be right. We're not sure if we want to be that proactive. And it's just easier if we just start putting those tasks into our calendar, and then that dictates where we go when, and maybe where we spend our money, and certainly how we spend our time. And whether we know it or not, it also tells us what's most important. to the point where sometimes we will hit the Christmas season or even Easter and spring break, and we wonder, where has the time gone? And why didn't we do the things that we said together that we wanted to focus on as a family, as individuals? So through September, we're gonna do this sermon series on how then shall we live, and we start out with what's truly important to us. And I do want to challenge each one of us to think about what's truly important, and I think these scriptures talk about that as well. Now, this transfiguration scripture is, as Pastor Cheryl said, one that comes after Jesus has been with the disciples and asked who people say that he is, and then he asked them who they think he is, and Peter makes that confession that he's the Messiah, and Jesus says, "You're the rock on which I will build the church," and then Jesus says, "I'm going to be crucified and will die so that I can be resurrected." And Peter said, oh no, that can't happen to you. And Jesus says, "Now you need to get behind me, because you have in mind not the things of God, but the things of humanity." How easy is it to get confused about the two? The things of God and the things of humanity. That's what sometimes gets in our way when we try to set our priorities as people of faith, as those who come together proactively to say that faith is very much the foundation of which we live. But sometimes the world just gets in the way. It sort of blinds us to what it is that we want to be and want to do as disciples of the living Christ. And then Jesus does talk about how if we try to save our own lives in this world, if we try to make ourselves happy with all the things that the world tells us will make us happy and satisfied, that in fact we will end up losing our sense of self. But if we're willing to lose all the things the world tells us will define us and focus on our faith, then in fact we will find out who we truly are. And Jesus talks about the power of the kingdom of God. And then we have the scriptures that Cheryl read this morning. 6 days later, Jesus then takes Peter, James, and John up a mountain, and suddenly his clothes, it says, become dazzling white. I think they don't know how else to describe it. Dazzling white to the point that bleach could not even have gotten them that way. And then they also see Moses, who represents what? All of the law, those grand 10 commandments that if we know no other laws, we know those, at least some of them. And Elijah, and we remember Elijah as he fought the battles for God and showed faith, and then weakness, and then faith again, which sort of feels familiar to us. And they're standing talking to Jesus, and there is no description of what they're saying together. It's like it's a vision. Jesus has brought Peter, James, and John up the mountain to see a vision so that they realize that Jesus is their friend. He is this human being, and he is also the divine. And I love Peter in this moment so much, because Jesus doesn't ask Peter a question, but Peter talks anyway. Are you one of those people? It may not surprise you that I am, right? If you're in the middle of something you've never experienced before and you don't know what to do about it, it's just best if you start talking. And Peter's terrified, and the other disciples are terrified. So Peter just says, "Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. I know. Let's build dwellings. One for you," tents essentially. "One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And before we start thinking, well, that's a strange thing to do, I'm going to ask you kind of a rhetorical question that I think I could probably answer for every one of you. Have any of you ever taken a selfie? You know, where you hold your arm out as far as you can, unless you have a selfie stick, which holds your camera farther out so that you look better in those selfie pictures. And what are we trying to do when we're taking a selfie? I would tell you we're trying to do the same thing Peter's trying to do in this moment. Let's capture it. Let's make sure people can believe it when I tell them what happened. Let's nail this down. Let's build something. Let's make something concrete. Let's figure out a way to somehow domesticate the holy. I love the pictures you take and post on Instagram or Facebook of rainbows or of your kids hitting a home run or or of the various things that you want to capture in your life and put out for people to see. It's our trying to build that moment into some kind of a concrete memory so that when we describe it to people, maybe they'll get a better sense of it. I think that's exactly what Peter is trying to do. And as he says that, it says suddenly they look around and Moses and Elijah are gone, and a cloud descends. And a voice comes out of that cloud that says, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." We've seen the cloud descend before. It descended on the tent of meeting when these people of God are released from slavery, when they move through that parted Red Sea, and now they're out in the wilderness, and there is a tent of meeting where when the cloud descends, they know that God is communicating with Moses. And then when Moses goes up the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments, and he's gone for so long, and the cloud has descended on the mountains, and the people below think that Moses perhaps has been a sacrifice to God, and so they try to create their own God. Again, right? Let's build our own. Let's make it concrete. Let's try to find a way to capture God. And it's all for the best reasons. But what's most important on this mountain? What's most important? Keep that, as a friend of mine would say, keep that on your side porch as I move into Exodus. What does Exodus have to do with the Mount of Transfiguration? What do two ordinary midwives have to do with the Mount of Transfiguration? You remember the story with me as Cheryl gave us some context that one of Jacob's 12 sons, Joseph, has found favor with a king over Egypt because he was able to interpret a dream that said there would be 7 years of famine. And so that way the king could store up 7 years of plenty to get them through the 7 years of famine. And it comes true. And so Joseph receives high status in that kingdom. But you know what? He passes and the king passes and generations pass. And now there is a king over Egypt who does not remember Joseph. And what he sees are these Israelites, these Hebrews, these people that were Joseph's people, and he notices that they are multiplying. And what he thinks to himself is, if these Israelites ever join up with an enemy, they will be formidable foes to my kingdom. And so the king enslaves them. He oppresses them. And yet they keep multiplying. And so he says to those who are supervising them, give them more work to do. Tell them to make more bricks and more mortar. Tell them to build more things for me. And they do, but they keep multiplying. So the king calls in Shiphrah and Puah. Do you know, out of all the women that are mentioned in the Bible, most of them are not given names. So we have what? The bent over woman. We have the woman with the hemorrhage. We have the woman who confronts the unjust judge. We have the woman who says to Jesus, even the dogs get scraps from the table. All these women who are not given name, and there are these two Hebrew midwives who are given names. Don't underestimate the power of that. And the Egyptian king calls them into his presence, and he says, here's what we need to do. I'm getting more and more worried about this population of these Hebrews. So when you go to the birthing stool and the Hebrew women are having babies, when you see it's a male child, kill it. But the girl children you can let live. Oh, how many people have underestimated girl power. How many have underestimated the courage of women. So the scripture says, in very short form, the midwives feared God, so they did not do what the king asked them to do. They had a choice to make. It was a life and death choice on every level. They had to decide what was most important to them: fear of their own death, bringing to death male Hebrew children, and their faith. Which would take priority? Which would be most important? Which would the world tell them would be most profitable to them? Most profitable to them would be to follow the king of Egypt's orders. And in fact, they might even be given higher status as women in a society that had no status. It says, though, that they feared God. Now, this was not fear like, oh my gosh, God's going to strike me down or condemn me. This is a holy fear. The translation of this is a holy fear. It would be better translated as awe. Or a healthy fear or humility of God's power and God's majesty. Have we lost that? Have we so domesticated who God is with Jesus Christ that we've forgotten that not only is God immanent, God is eminent? That not only is God close to us, God is also beyond us. These midwives seem to remember that. And so they choose to set their priority on their love of this God. And so the king brings them back into his court and says, what's happening? I understand these boy Hebrew babies are living. And they say, well, look, the Hebrew women are more vigorous than the Egyptian women. Have you ever wanted to be described as vigorous? I feel like that fits me. You know, I've never really been known as petite or fragile, but vigorous, that fits. These Hebrew women are more vigorous, and they give birth before we can even get there, so there's nothing we can do. And do you know the king doesn't punish them? It says that then he makes an edict that says, all male Hebrew children under the age of 2 are to be put to death, to be drowned in the Nile. And we'll talk about Moses' story as we go. But I wanted to start with these midwives because we wouldn't get to that part of the story if there weren't these 2 ordinary women who make a choice, who reflect on what their faith means in their lives and decide to put a priority, to make important, so important what their faith in God is, that then dictates what they do. Now let's go back to the gospel. As the disciples are coming down the mountain with Jesus, having just experienced this vision, Jesus said to them, don't tell anyone, this is in Mark's gospel, don't tell anyone what's happened until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. What? We've just seen you talking to Moses and Elijah. We've just seen your robe turn dazzlingly white. We tried to take a selfie of the whole thing, and now you want us not even to tell anyone about it? So what does Jesus want them to focus on? If it's not about witnessing to the magical nature of who Jesus is, what is it Jesus wants them to focus on? What happens after Moses and Elijah disappear? A voice comes from a cloud that they would have recognized in terms of a cloud descending being God's presence. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. We want to know what it means to decide together what's truly important in our lives as people of faith. How do we do that? How do we sift through all of that? This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him and make your choices. Listen to him and set your priorities. Listen to him and receive the courage to stand against the empire. Listen to him and know that I will give you resources. Listen to him and you will have a kind of courage that you wouldn't even know that you had. Listen to him. That's what brings these 2 stories together. That holy fear of a God who we know wants good things for us and can move in, beyond, and through us for those good things to happen not only for us, but to happen through us for the world. So again, how are you deciding to set your priorities as we enter into this new activity year? as we put together that schedule that will keep us hopping with school and with sports and with jobs and with travel and with holidays and with all the things that come with it that make our life worth living. How will you set priorities with all of that? Or will you just let them happen and hope you can keep up? And where will your faith fit into that? What if making decisions from a perspective of faith, of listening to Jesus as God invited the disciples to do? What if we let that be the structure around which we build the rest of our life? Why do I keep telling you about grace groups? Why do I keep telling you about disciple Bible study? If we don't know what Jesus says, how can we listen to what we're supposed to do? If we don't know Jesus of the Gospels, how do we listen to him and trust that what he has for us as priorities will put our life in order? Will help to save the purpose and meaning of our life beyond our understanding? Will help give us that solid foundation so that when the unexpected things happen this year, we will bend but we won't break. And when we decide together as a community to listen to Jesus, the living Word of God, what power we have. Whether we are small or mighty, those two midwives changed the shape of our faith history. Those rather fearful disciples changed the face of our faith history. Now God calls us in our time to change the face of our faith history. Decide with me what's truly important as we enter into this year, and may our faith be our vision. Amen.